Good morning. Hello, hello. How's everybody today? Welcome to the Paint Fumes Art and Chat, live painting and chat. I'm Lynell Ingram, and today I have a watercolor set up to work on. So I have been working on an oil painting, and it is at a state where it needs some more time to set and dry what I had done to it before I can move on to the next stages. So that piece is kind of in pause for the moment. But there's always plenty of other things to work on. So right now I'm just using my pipette to add some water into my flats of paint, my little paint pans for my watercolor palette. So they're kind of can soften up a little bit and be ready to go. And I hope that the sound is good. I hope that anyone will let me know if it's not, because I do have a fan running in the room. I've added a noise gate to try to have the microphone not be picking that up. But yeah, hopefully the quality is alright and everything is clear. So that's the basic setup for today. It is hot in here. It's going to be 82 today, and this room is just a closed little cave with one window, and air doesn't move. It just gets hot in a hurry. So I have a fan in the window. I could probably use another fan in here. That one is specifically designed to go in windows, which works fine for working with oil paints. It's actually good because I can set it to blow out. Not as necessary, of course. Watercolors aren't exactly toxic, but either way, this is what we're going to be working on, starting to set some colors. A better light on here, where I'm not going to be blocking it. There we go. Hopefully that'll be better. All right. I have a 12 by 16 watercolor pad, so it's attached on 3 sides, so that will help hold everything in place while I'm working. I do find that if you work a lot on the paper, will eventually start to peel up, but it's kind of nice to have a full bleed piece of artwork, essentially. And the first thing I'm going to do is lay in a wash on the background. I don't usually work with watercolor upright. Normally I work with it flat, but I thought it would be nice to give it a shot on the easel and see. I have worked upright before when I've done like live demonstrations with watercolor, and you just gotta control it a little bit more in terms of how heavy you lay on the water and be aware of anything dripping. I'm just getting my paper nice and damp for background. I'll lay a wash on here, just to like kind of set the color tone. Have something cool in my background, and pull some warm colors into my figure. I'm doing what I often do when I work with figurative pieces, which is have a kind of awkward and uncomfortable cropping. That is a deliberate choice, in case it looks odd to anybody. I'm in fact doing that on purpose. I'm using a nice big kind of a flood brush, holds a lot of water for setting this up, kind of like getting at an angle to see where the paper's wet and not. All right, nice damp surface. So I'm going to go ahead and get some color on here. I'll go into some like bluish violet for part of it. And then I might kind of pull that into a green tone. let it gradate a little bit. A bit of an ombre effect. So the advantage to having my paper be wet, damp before I go in and do this is that the color will move a bit on its own. It will help to kind of disguise brush strokes. Let the fill be a little bit more natural. Of course, my color is probably going to settle a bit because I'm working upright, but just going with it and seeing what happens. On some of this green color. Getting a little reckless there. And I probably will have some of these tones on my figure, but I'll do a better controlled job of blending those together once we get to that. And there's a brush. Here. Come on. Now that's like the worst thing that happens. All right. Mary Beth, hello, good morning. Good to see you here. Hope you're enjoying this nice warm weather. Little bordering on too warm for my preference, but it's fine. It's just that like skipping over the really pleasant fall days, which I think we might have next week. I think next week is supposed to be like the high 60s. That's my jam. And I am actually going to use the angle of my work here to my advantage for a second. And let some color, like deliberately let some color drip. A lot of the background will ultimately get a decent amount of coverage over it in the end, just because that's a lot of how I work. Let me grab a paper towel real quick. Well, maybe not. I have wires in my way. All right. So just a little texture going on. Harry says the thing. I love the same thing. Yeah, I love the hot weather. Yeah, I run hot, so I'm always comfortable this time of year. We do have air conditioning in our place, but it doesn't really reach the studio because of the way our home is set up. So it's always warm in here. Okay. So while that sets a little bit, I'll also fill in some of my negative spaces around figure on this side, which is the surface she's sitting on. So that can be warmer tone than the background, I'm thinking. Not super warm, but maybe I'll just add some more for my first layer. Make it a redder violet, so it's still a cool tone, but it's one of those shades that sort of goes in between. Oh, and I believe that today will be actually my 100th video on YouTube. So that's crazy. That's cool. been doing this, I guess, on and off for a while. The live videos are just started this year. A while before that, I was just making random videos about random art things, having fun with it, and got away from it. But then here I am again. Okay. And just between a couple fingers and over here, and then that's the background. Hold this up for a second so I can get into that little spot. This sort of thing would be the downfall of working upright with watercolor. One of the downfalls of it. Not that big of a deal. Not very steady handed this morning, in case you didn't notice. Okay. Oh, I'm moving this too far. Feel like I need to figure out this lighting a little better. Move it a little more over here. Maybe that's trick. Figuring out the right lighting from day to day and project to project can certainly be a bit of a bit of a hassle. I have no doubt about that. Okay. This part's still, oh, it's getting there. More wet along this edge. So the next thing that I would do is start to lay in some washes on her. I think that I might start with just an overall kind of warmer wash as a bit of an undertone. But pretty light, not very saturated. And then once that is set, then I'd go in and do a layer of shadows. But I'm going to, what I will avoid in this stage is any areas that are actually like white. Any really, really, really highlighted areas. I'm kind of looking at a reference photo I have while I do. And you definitely have to be careful with the edges. The drop there, if I get wet there, that's just going to bleed in and give her a purple line, which isn't necessarily what I'm going for yet at this point. I like this pose because there's almost like a Greek kind of elegance to it, statuesque. I really like this figure that I've been working on. The tricky thing with working with any size of watercolor on something very specific is definitely trying to avoid hard edges. So you kind of have to, you're almost at a race with your own brush strokes to keep color moving. So you don't have an edge that dries too hard on you when you're not ready for it to dry. I'm doing this much more chaotically than most people probably would. Might probably keep it a little neater and more methodical. Wouldn't be the worst decision in the world to do it that way, but it is me we're talking about. I don't always do plans well. I try. Definitely try. Okay. So this leg before I get any dry edges. I think a little more saturation over there just because this area is going to be a lot more shadow. So give it a little more color. This is a very warm undertone for the skin, which will be nice and also neutralizing any cool shades that I add for the shadows. All right. And there we have one base layer. I should just put that all together. Better? Oh yeah, that's much better. I think. That light in that position was working just fine when I was doing the oil painting, but less so this one. And before it's entirely dry, I'm also going to maybe soften some of the edges on the face where I left it. Left it for some white. I'm actually going to use the same undertone for the hair, I think. Need to mix some more. Using mostly gold with a little bit of red and plenty of water. All right. And the background is still, obviously the paper is still a little buckled from water, but it's not wet. There's just like a bit of dampness in it. So I don't have to worry about color completely bleeding, but it is at that dangerous stage where you can overwork and damage the paper. So definitely have to be a little bit careful with that. And she'll be there in a minute. I haven't quite determined what the theme being behind this piece is exactly going to be. I have vague thoughts in my mind, but sometimes if I don't have something very specific, I start with looking for a reference to work from. And I'm kind of blindly searching for something until something strikes me. And I really, this pose, this figure definitely did that for me. So I'm going to build off of her and just let it be a little bit like intuitive and what does it say as for me to say when I work through it. But yeah, it's also an element of keeping in mind where the body of work I'm currently working on is and how many figures I have where we have more of a body than just like a head. I've done quite a few pieces recently where it's sort of just a portrait. So kind of going back to where I started and round it out a little bit and try this with what I've learned since I initially started this series of work. Process is always adjusting and changing a little bit. I don't know. It's a lovely day, but I probably won't go out if I don't have to, because it's just that weather that walks that line for me of being just a little too uncomfortably warm. So maybe tomorrow's going to be gorgeous. I think more like 69, 70 degrees or something like that, and that'd be a good day to go out and run any errands that need to be done. I need to pick up one painting from the 100 Under 100 show in Arlington Heights here. One sold, one I'll have to go get. So yeah, I'll try to do that tomorrow, and Costco run possibly. A few things we need. More fans being one of them. Definitely more fans. Okay. Don't forget to fuel. Caffeine. I woke up early this morning, randomly, just no reason. And yet I haven't drank all that much coffee. Maybe it is how warm it is. Could be. Okay. I can start to work in some cooler shadows. I'll start from the top down. This is pretty much dry here. And the bottom down here where I painted last is getting close. Probably by the time I work through, it will be fine. So my initial shadow layer, let's see here. I'll use some of the same blue that I used in the background color for this. And in the end, I don't even know how much of the background is going to show through it all. That's a very good question mark in the air, but just having something there to work off of will probably be helpful. Okay, so starting at the top and work our way down. Of course, the blue on the primarily gold tone under painting did a little bit of a green cast, which it's always kind of amazing to realize just how much green is in people. We don't really think about it too much, but a lot of green tones in skin. And deciding where edges need to soften as I go. Some of the shadows are going to be a little harder, the one underneath her neck for the most part. I like to kind of err on the side of caution with loading my brush. Always add more, but it's quite difficult to take away once you put it down. And it's one of those ways where watercolor is not very forgiving to work with. When you paint on it, a lot of these shades will not go away once they're there. At least not entirely. So you definitely have to work with a little bit of intention and at least some planning. As I said, I'm not the greatest at planning, but I do okay with watercolor somehow, nonetheless. It's almost weird to me that it's probably about my most comfortable medium right now. Who would have thought? So many things that I thought that I would never work with have ended up being such a significant part of the ways that I work in one way or another. Never thought I'd really work with watercolor. There was a point in time, like shortly after college, where I thought I'd never work with vectors, anything, like working with Illustrator. I'd never figure that out. Wouldn't do that. Well, turns out I did a lot of that over the years. You just don't ever really know. It is fun to work with like really small, detailed areas. I find it very interesting. I think I need a little bit more the hairline too. And this can be a weird stage where things look maybe weird, like the face doesn't look right or whatever, but this is not the place where I'm trying to get like incredibly accurate features. This is just more about accurate lighting. Anyway, that's the intention. So, you know, kind of talk about what I'm thinking and doing. I am by no means any kind of an expert on anything. First to admit that. A little bit of the, what is it? Master of None. Quote. Totally blanking on the first part of that. But that's an interesting quote because there's a whole nother part to it. What is that? Oh man. Sometimes my brain. I need to switch to a larger brush, clearly. Okay. That should help. Jack of all trades, master of none. Yes, there's a further part of that quote that actually says that being the jack of all trades is perhaps the better thing, which I'm not going to argue with that, but I don't think that is by and large the accepted logic in our culture. Jack of all trades, master none. Yeah. Know enough to be dangerous about a few things. I think one of the few things I maybe can talk about with some I don't know, credibility, I hope, is creativity in general. Like, I'm not a master painter. No, nobody's gonna study under my tutelage of becoming a great watercolor, acrylic, oil painter, anything like that. But just general creativity and utilizing it and finding it, nurturing it. Making it a very important aspect of how we live our lives. I'd like to think so, but I don't. If anything, I think I'd just like to inspire people to try things. If I could have a say in how I impact the world at all, I would like to do that. I would like to inspire people to, you know, be creative, to explore, trying things, figuring out who they are, what's important to them, becoming better, more authentic versions of ourselves along the way, maybe. Yeah, if I could have any impact through my channel here, I think that would be it. I'm going to dab where the color is pooling here. I'm not ready to get that dark of a shadow happening on this yet. All right, back to the arm. Still showing well. I'm trying to keep an eye to make sure I'm not like standing in front of the painting while I'm working, but and that hopefully you can hear me clearly. Oh, they're now doing lawn work outside, so I might go close the window. If anyone says that they can hear the lawn mowers and feel free to yell at me if I'm like standing in the wrong spot or anything like that. If there's any issues, I'm trying to keep an eye on it, but I certainly could be missing things. There's definitely an element of multitasking to this, so entirely likely to miss things. I thought they did the lawn work at our building like early this morning. I was kind of relieved. I'm like, oh, then I won't have to worry about that. The sound of it. But I think they're now doing lawn work across the street. So, you know, sometimes you just can't entirely win. Fine. How it goes. I just am happy that I'm not the one that has to mow the lawn. So, you know, right side. It's all good. Cannot hear them. Oh, good. If it does come up, if it gets loud, just say so. I'm usually more likely to just tune those things out personally and not even notice them myself until somebody else is like, "Oh, doesn't that bother you?" I'm like, "Oh, well, thanks for pointing it out because now it does. Didn't before." But it is a thing that I can fix. It's an issue. Still in the right place. It's all very pale right now, and that is I'm gonna move this up a little bit, I think. It's very pale, but this is how I usually start a watercolor, by getting some of these I work light and I build layers, which not everybody does it that way. Some people like kind of approach it like they do basically one or two layers and they just get the saturation right the first time. And that's something that I wouldn't mind playing with, trying that a little bit with how I work. I'd be curious to see how well that would go with how I tend to work. But that might be the kind of experiment. I may or may not do that on stream. I do a lot of like kind of screwing around and experimenting for the sake of just, you know, hey, we're making things, let's try stuff here, but that could definitely go down the path of big time failure, needs a little practice. So maybe I'd do some trial runs on it before I actually try it out live. I don't know. It depends. But I will at least try it at some point. I'm gonna get a little bit more blue into the leg, because I had the heavier underpainting there. So we'll bring a little bit more the blue tone back so it's not as green, and that kind of balance some of these things a little bit more. And this area is actually really should be the darkest here behind her arm. Smooth some of it out anyway. I like to let some of the brush strokes show. I'm not a very like refined photorealistic style artist, so let the art be what it is. Okay, and everything's kind of drying. The buckling of the paper is sort of smoothing out from the wet washes that I used in the background. I think I'll do something dangerous and maybe try to lift a little bit of the color here. This is 140-pound cold press paper. So it's pretty good quality, but it doesn't hold up to the greatest amounts of abuse either. So, you know, you gotta kind of balance how you use your supplies. I haven't actually had a whole lot of experience working with a lot of hot press paper, but that's something I will eventually try to do as well. I think one of the things that I have learned with watercolor is that it is a medium so often I think, like, if you want to try something, just do it. You don't need the really expensive art supplies. I think that if you're gonna invest in anything with watercolor, it should be the paper, more so than the paints. Because the paper, having cheap paper will actually make things more difficult on you. So I don't mean go out and buy, you know, $100 sheets of watercolor paper or anything crazy, but just if you're gonna put a few extra, like if you have a few dollars to spend on supplies, lean more heavily towards the paper than the brushes and the paints to get started, and that will probably be helpful to you. Okay. I would say that this is pretty much, oh, I got oil paint on my shade. Alright, that one's getting put to the side for the rest of the day till I wash that with some soap. Dropping brushes. Ugh. Okay. So my next layer will actually be some like red tones. And let me think. Before I move on to doing that, I'm going to add some areas where the shadows are on the surface where she's sitting. So things kind of will build a little bit together. Background, I'm not sure I'm going to do much more than where it is now. Like I said, a lot of it will get covered in the end with other materials. So, again, I'm going to use a bit of the same blue to denote shadows on, or darker areas on the background. Cushions. I've always kind of enjoyed drawing hands. Not always, I guess. I probably, like most people, find it to be pretty challenging at first, but I figured out pretty quickly that you treat them like geometric shapes. The plane of hand here, and then each finger is like a series of dimensional rectangles. And if you do that, that helps tremendously in getting them into position and having them be in the proper place. And then you just got to worry about your proportions. Never said it was entirely easy. likely pretty well covered by the frame or matting. All right, I think this is the last watercolor thing that I bought. I got myself a nice flathead brush, number 16, number 10. Can't read. I think I need to get a go to an eye doctor pretty soon. Yeah, this is the last thing that I bought for when I'm doing watercolor painting, so that was kind of a fun thing to test out and try working with. And I really enjoyed it. It's quite nice for working in these like larger areas where I don't necessarily need like a big flood type brush, but I don't necessarily want a round one either. Okay. So now maybe we'll work into the face of it, because this area is all pretty much completely dry. Down here, damp, as I've been working top down, trying to work with gravity here. Let me move this over a little bit so you see the face a little bit better while I'm working on that very particular. And quick pause for coffee. If you have your coffee, cheers. One of my favorite things. My happy place. Studio, sun shining, although not in the studio because I'm east facing. Anyway, cheers, and hope you're enjoying your tea or coffee or whatever you're doing with your day. Hopefully something creative in store for you. All right. Switching back to my nice soft pencil brush. It's a brush. Number 6. This is a Klinsky. This is the most expensive brush I've maybe ever bought. And even then, you always have to take that with a grain of salt when I say something's expensive, because expensive for me is not expensive. It just means I didn't cheap out completely. So, you know, for whatever it's worth. I just want to move this so that the face is a little bit more, not as much. I mean, I guess, here, let me see what happens. I'm a little worried about moving the camera. But I'm going to try real quick to adjust the camera so I can zoom in on the face a little bit. Well, that's about as good as, I think that's as good as I can get here. All right, pardon the insanity for a second. I'm going to see if it looks like it's a little out of focus. Yep. Sharpen up the focus a bit. Okay. Okay, I think you can see, I hope you can see a little bit better now. And I'm going to move into warm tones, into like the red family. So I'm going to get some of the color mixed on my palette here. And if anyone's curious, I'm using a Winsor and Newton palette where I bought it with the standard set, and then I have added a few random colors over time. And just kind of getting just on maybe the rose side of an almost neutral red, almost brownish in tone, but not quite. Okay. I do have a little spray bottle nearby, which I think I am actually going to dampen this just a bit. I need a new spray bottle. This one's crappy. Okay. Anyway, that's what we got today. All right. Look at my reference picture here. And I print my references in black and white almost always. Because I kind of just don't let it determine where I place my color as much. Because I'm going to make the decisions for the way that I work based on the overall piece more than the reference photo. Just did a little collaging in my journal on my way to PT. We'll see if my connection holds. Oh, okay. Oh, awesome! I love it, collaging. That's something that more recently I started working with too. It's fun. There's something like fun about that. I think it's like I do it in a serious way, but it feels childlike and like it's a little bit of play in your art. I just love that. Big fan. Big fan of collage. And I hope your PT goes well too. I have always had mixed results myself with PT, but I think that sometimes there have been times where I was trying it for things that it didn't end up being the solution for, so that happens. But sometimes it has helped a lot. The hair in the end is going to be a different color than the skin, but I'm using some of the same layers as part of the build for it. Because I think our hair, that's our natural color, has a lot of the same kind of undertones and things. Just, and even if it doesn't, it's just a kind of a way to keep things relating to each other. Right. Liking how this is developing. Well, lifting a little color on the chin. I think I lost my highlight there a little bit. All right, there was some green in that brush, apparently. Things never go according to plan. And that's just the creative process. And somehow these layers, as we go, manage to start looking like skin tone. I haven't mixed a single classic skin tone shade. I haven't used any browns at all on her. But we're kind of getting into it here. Starts to come together. Okay. Now I'm going to pull in a little bit more color on my palette before I start working into the body, so I have it all ready to go. Make sure I'm matching. Okay. My head is right in the camera's way while I do that. I could get something to hold my palette probably on this side of my easel would be smart. I'm also going to switch to a larger brush again, slightly larger. I think I'll go back to my flat brush. For the body, almost all of my shapes and areas are going to be larger, and I don't want lots of individual brush strokes trying to build and make them work. So, okay. Let's dig in here. Once I get to here, I'm going to try to remember to adjust my camera again. This is because it's a little bit more an effort to build skin tone. This gets applied pretty liberally. I always laugh in the classes that I teach. It's 9 to 11-year-olds. But the studio, we teach all ages, adults, teens, adults. I think the youngest class is one younger than the ones I have, and that is the 6 to 8. They can start there. So when they look for a reference in my classes, or to do a painting or something, if they're looking through art magazines and they come across a nude figure, that's always, often with a lot of the kids, just scandalous. We definitely need to teach kids proper boundaries when it comes to bodies. But I think it's also okay to teach them that, I mean, it's not my place to make these decisions. I don't get into it with them. For individual kids and such, that's entirely up to their families. But the body isn't obscene in and of itself. We all have, ultimately, a naked body, right? We are not obscene in and of ourselves. But there's a lot of weight and cultural structure behind long-standing assumptions about things, and these are not a place where I'm going to change anybody's mind or tell them what to do. It's just when it comes up, and usually it's like laughing and, oh my god, look what I found. Well, if you go to an art museum, there's going to be a lot of people that you're going to see bodies. And I do tell them, like, don't think of it as obscene. This is just artists painting what they find beautiful or interesting. Body's a machine, and kind of in that case. I don't know. It's awkward. It can be awkward because I don't want to put any meaning onto them about how they should view it, but at the same time, like, yeah, it's also not something that is terrible, really, like in terms of art. Oh god, like that whole ruckus about Michelangelo's David at some school district. Or didn't somebody get like fired or pushed out because they showed the David? Hey. We are a country built on Puritan values, so maybe it just is what it is. Oh, okay. Yes, adjust the camera a little bit so we can see everything. Again. Oh, hold on. I got it. There we go. Okay. It still seems to be showing up a little bit more, even a little bit more washed out than it actually is on the screen, and I guess that's just byproduct of the lighting in here, maybe, because I do have the windows open because the sun is shining. You know, always a battle, and I think I'd like to think I've gotten a little better at managing these technical things as I've come along, but I mean, yeah, I'm sure there's always room for growth and improvement. Always, always. A couple of these spots of cooling color again, so I can control where the darkest darks end up. And I'm actually gonna pull a little bit more color for when I do the lake, because it is a large swath of skin, and I don't want to stop halfway through it and have to mix a little bit more. Okay. Here we go. I'm gonna get pretty solid coverage. Like maybe just a little bit of highlight right where the knee stay. Okay. And there's my cat. Hello, Watson. Ford, come to say hi. He's been enjoying being able to look outside. In fact, yesterday he apparently had when I wasn't home, a good lunge at the screen, the patio screen, and about pushed out through a spot. And so we have to be very careful about how much we open the screen door at the moment. And I'm gonna have to get that fixed. Yeah, such as it is to live with cats. Apparently, a bird landed on the patio. That's just way too much temptation. There are a few spots where I'm kind of letting the red be a little bit more aggressive. Let me step back for a second. Okay. I think a little more clarity on the arm, the shade I've got. All right. I'm definitely getting the paper pretty wet with this layer. All right. Let's see. This is a very good initial few layers. This is 3 layers on her skin. Three layers of color. One was like a warm undertone. Then I put in some shadows. And this one is some reds. A little bit more detail on the hand. And it's sort of, you gotta balance your areas. Make sure that nothing's getting too neglected while other areas are getting worked up a lot. Want it to kind of build together in a way that is cohesive. That definitely takes stepping back and saying, what did I spend too much time on? What needs then more time? And I think a little bit more. Here, for sure. Sometimes a little bit of something goes up. I don't know. Most of the time it's like something's either on your palette or you've picked up a bit of paper. I don't think I've picked up any of the paper at this point. Not that that doesn't ever happen to me. Certainly can. All right. There will certainly be more, some more layers of evening out some things, but probably not a ton. Okay. My paper is at the point of saturation. I need to stop working on this till it has an opportunity to dry a little bit before I regret anything. At that point where you start picking up more color than you're laying down, you know, time to walk. Time to walk for a little bit. And my face is going to be dry because I haven't gone back into it since I initially started this this layer. And I am going to need more into the hand. It's not bad, I just definitely am not getting the same build on shadows. So I'll go back with a smaller brush probably and refine some of those areas once that's good and dry. And from here, I might do another, actually, like a bit of a red toned layer. And I'm trying to think if that would be, I still feel like most of it's pretty warm. Although there are a couple areas where I'd like to bring some warmth, just a little bit punched back into it. Here in the hand. Even those out a little, but is what happens is anything that's particularly warm comes forward more than things that are cooler. So I don't actually want this leg to be coming out like in front of this hand and this leg so much, and even like the stomach. If this is falling, this part's falling back, it shouldn't. This should be some of the area that's coming the most forward. So definitely need to bring more warmth in here. And that's probably going to be bringing some tones from my initial underpainting, the gold tones. And I think I can pull some cooler reds into the face a little bit. And decide on the hair. I'm kind of thinking I might, I don't know, sort of thinking out loud right at the moment. Not sure. Yeah, those will be the next steps on the figure for sure. And once I have those things, once I've done those things, where I've controlled what's coming forward, what's being pushed back a little bit more, then I can decide how much more it really needs. If she needs much more than that. And probably not. If anything, I might add some more details. Once those shades are done, I'll add some darker darks. Most likely in some of the facial features. And maybe a small wash of it in the darkest shadow spots, but just barely. Just to make sure everything is cohesive. And while I'm thinking and talking, I'm going to bring some warm into the blanket down here that's covering the sitting. I don't want that to be like a center of attention, but it also is something that's at least as forward as her hand is and her leg. So that will get more work. This part can be cooler, this part will be a little bit warmer, especially down here. And Okay. I used the same warm tone as I used on her just now, so that may or may not end up working. I'll probably need to give it a layer of maybe an orangey red for the rest of the color. At this point, it's really all about controlling what's forward, what's backwards. Yeah, and this I just somehow managed to create a little like bullseye dot down here, and that will have to go. But I think this is the point at which I will stop working on this for today. It's actually, I mean, thanks for watching me go with this. And great progress on it for just a few washes over what, not even an hour and a half. See this as I go and I grab more paint, and I'm just a masochist a little bit sometimes. All right, now for real. Now for real, walking away. Before I ruin anything. Not ruin anything. I see something though. I've made the leg come in too hard in this corner. I don't know if this would be something that people would see once this would be framed, but that makes the leg look really short right there. It's really hard to let go of what you're working on and be like, okay, that's it, I'm done. And maybe it's just me. I don't know. Thank you. Have the rest of your day. Good choice. Thank you. And thanks for joining me. Have an awesome day out there, anybody who's hanging around here. Hope you have a lot of creativity and finish the week strong and be awesome. Enjoy the weather. Thanks, guys. I will see you, hopefully, Monday evening, 7 p.m. Central, right back here. So have a great one. Bye.